Back in early 2022, FromSoft would release their most anticipated game ever. Now, in mid-2024, I would finally give this game a go.
It was a terrible mistake.
Oh boy, where do I even begin with this game? I've never been into Souls-like games before because I always assumed that they'd be way too difficult for me.
I was 100% correct.
But after finally beating Dark Souls 3 earlier this year, I decided that it was finally time to beat Elden Ring.
Welcome to the review of Elden Ring.
If you're looking for an extremely hard and arduous experience, then Elden Ring is the game for you. No, but seriously, this game is not new player friendly. I spent almost an hour and a half just fighting the Tree Sentinel because I thought he'd be the easiest to kill.
Oh, ow.
Finding anything in this game can be an absolute nightmare to the inexperienced, and surfing Reddit pages and Twitter threads would only leave you dazed because what are they talking about? Can't be English, right? Oh, I assure you, Shibriri is an actual word in the game. Okay, but let me just start actually talking about the game now. When you finally realize that the graces point in the direction you're supposed to go, then you're finally going to hit the first boss of the run, Margit. And holy hell, does he punish you for spam rolling. I swear to God he delays his attacks by half a second every single time I fight him. But with his delayed attacks, followed up by the flash speeds of dagger shanks, you better hope you get lucky. Now Margit isn't the only boss in the game with delayed attack timers. Elden Ring have made sure to punish any dirty little spam rollers by making every goddamn boss have a delayed attack. Why am I not bosses, you say? Well, let me introduce you to them. Deathbirds, Watchdog, Godskins, Crystallians, I think that covers them all. No, but seriously, for some reason FromSoft decided it'd be a great idea to Control-C, Control-V bosses around the world as many times as possible. You basically run out of original boss fights by the second area. It's honestly kinda crazy. You might think to yourself, well, they probably have really cool areas to explore. And to that, I say, kinda? I mean, yeah, some areas are actually really interesting, like the sewers, but it just seemed like developers didn't even care. Like, they made specific areas for boss fights, and they were just filled with random NPCs that were found in the overworld. Like, take for example, Deep-Root Depths. It took me over 1.5 playthroughs to even figure out that place existed. And this brings me to my main point about this whole video, and that's exploring is seen as a necessity and not an option. Like, those of you who choose not to explore are punished. And this is what ultimately ruined my first experience with some of these bosses, because by the time I made my way to them, I was extremely overleveled. And so even with their really powerful arsenals, I felt like I could just tank through them. I mean, Millennia's Waterfowl and Mohg's Phase Switch are two really strong and scary abilities if you're not level 220 going into it. And I know what you're thinking. This problem can just be solved by searching up a guide, but that's also another big issue in itself. It's extremely overwhelming for new players to come onto a game and actually learn to do it themselves when they can just go on YouTube and search up the next strongest build for Elden Ring. These videos get so many views because people don't want to do it themselves. And this might just seem like I'm nitpicking the game, and I am. I agree with you 100%. These are just small issues in the game, but that doesn't mean that they aren't valid. I mean, I enjoyed my second and third playthroughs way more than my first, because I knew exactly where I needed to go and what I needed to do. And the one thing that I really enjoyed about this game was that most main bosses were unique, and they actually seemed fair. I mean, bosses like Morgott and Malekith, although they were kicking my ass, actually didn't seem like it was at fault of their own, but my own fault for not being good enough. And this actually made it feel extremely validating and rewarding after beating these bosses, because I could actually think to myself that I didn't just get lucky in beating them, I beat them out of my own merit. The same cannot be said for Fire Giant though. I personally believe that that is the worst and most poorly designed boss in Soulsborne history. Now, I'm not going to get into specifics with Godskin Duo and Fire Giant because I think everybody has given their opinion on why those two boss fights suck. But what I did want to talk about is boss level design. Way often than not, I would walk into a catacomb or a cave and I'll just be underwhelmed with what developers have done with it. I mean, they would take the same old NPC bosses like imps or miners and just flood these caves and catacombs. And the worst part about it all is by the time you got to the bottom of these catacombs and caves, it was just bosses that you had seen before, just reskinned. It just was really underwhelming to get all the way to the bottom of a cave and just have to fight just a bigger enemy of what you just ran through. And this isn't even mentioning the small boss arena that is often filled with 2 or 3 enemies at a time that you have to battle in. I mean, a lot of the times these bosses would have AoE attacks that just hit you because there's literally nowhere to run or dodge. On my first playthrough, it took me like 20-25 minutes to get Lord of Blood's Exaltation because those 2 dogs plus the enemy that you have to fight were all just chain attacking me at a time and there was literally nothing I could have done. The sheer number of gank fights in these dungeons and catacombs is honestly overwhelming. It just seemed like developers had no idea what they were actually doing and just decided to slap 2 enemies in a room because it was easier than making a whole new boss. It honestly feels like if you're not part of the main bosses that you actually have to fight, you just get thrown to the curb. It just makes the game just look very unpolished in that aspect of being sold as an open world game, but not feeling like an open world game. I will say, although some of the open world aspects of the game do fall flat, that the main part of the game is amazing. I genuinely felt that no matter what I decided to spec into, if it was health, if it was strength, if it was dex, if it was faith, or even arcane, that there were multiple different items in the game that I could find fairly quickly that could fill that gap and be a viable option. I will say, although I was saying the optional boss fights weren't fun, I wasn't talking about them all. I mean, there were a bunch of fights that I actually really enjoyed in the main game. And that's because it actually felt like the developers felt passionate about making these kinds of bosses. And they were fun. It just seems so unfortunate that it looks like they've run out of time and they just really needed to fill the empty space with something. But just coming to the end of this, I just wanted to say that I actually really enjoyed this game. I mean, with each playthrough, it just feels like it's getting easier and easier and more fun because of it. I don't think I've enjoyed a game so much before than when I attempted my RL1. I mean, I've already put over 200 hours into this game and there's still plenty that I still want to do. So if you're looking for a game that's challenging, frustrating, and overall just a fun experience, I mean, I can't recommend Elden Ring enough, actually. It's a game in my library that's likely to stay a staple and I'll keep coming back to over and over again if I just want a fun time. That's all the thoughts I have on the game at the moment, so if you guys have any questions about any aspect of the game that you want me to talk about, feel free to drop a comment. If there's anything in the video that I said that you guys disagree with, also just leave a comment and I'll make sure to respond. And finally, if there's any other games you'd like me to play and review, I'd be happy to give them a go. Please feel free to like and subscribe because I'd actually like to keep doing more of these videos, and if you guys enjoy them, then that's the motivation I need to record them. Thanks guys, and see you in the next one.